Hey everybody, this is Cab from Kinetic Entertainment Media, and I want to go kind of on the way back and talk about a little bit of an older emulation tech that is still relevant today. In my personal opinion, I think it's better than ever. And just want to kind of what take you through what I do with my specific setup that makes it very easy for me to rent. I have a company, I rent Wii's for tournaments and parties and conventions, so they have to be very user friendly, easy to use. They have to be easy for me to set up, whether I'm there or not there. So hopefully some of these tricks will benefit you on how you want to set your Wii up and make it a really cool and enjoyable experience. So one of the first things I've done is I've used Preloader to auto boot into WeFlow. So WeFlow is the front end that you're seeing here, and we're going through right now. We're going through my Super Nintendo library. So preloader allows me to skip the health check, like the auto health check, and it allows me to not require. So it makes it so that you don't need a remote in order to pass the health check, and you can just boot straight into WeFlow. So preloader does a couple of firmware things that just make you able to kind of plug in the power, plug in the video, plug in a GameCube controller, and boot. And you are able to navigate in the menu in WeFlow with a GameCube controller. So that's pretty sweet. Now, once you're the only other stuff that's kind of specific to my setup is that I use a SD card in the front for my classic game ROMs. I have my artwork on there, and I have all except for the GameCube artwork, and I have my homebrew apps all on the internal SD card that's in the front slot. And then on the USB card, so I have like a thumb drive, like a SanDisk Cruiser, plugged into the back, and that is where I have my GameCube ISOs stored. So the reason for that is because the USB ports in the back are just more reliable. They have a better transfer rate, and there's just less problems loading ROMs from the USB storage in the back as opposed to the internal SD card storage. Now you can do it, but there can be game crashes, there can be bugs, there can be slowness in loading the games. So it's a really good tech and technique to be using a USB drive on the back for that. You can use a hard drive, you can use a thumbstick, you can use an SD card with a USB adapter. Just whatever you got to do to make sure that you're using the storage in the back for your large Wii or GameCube files. Now on the Wii stuff too, you want to be looking for things that are like FAT32 has like a 4 gig limitation. So if you're trying to get Wii games on it, you want to use games that have had like the cutscenes ripped out of them. So you can find those. You can make them yourself. You can also rip your own Wii games with CleanRip, which is a homebrew app, and you can rip your own Wii games. And when you actually, and it'll properly format and change. It'll change the Wii file format. It'll slice it up into a bunch of little pieces so that it can properly store on a FAT32 partition. But regardless of that, so WeFlow is a really interesting front end. I like it. I have the artwork set up really nice in here. You can expand the view on a game once you've kind of zoned in on what game you want. You can select favorite or not for that specific game. Like I don't like this game, so I'm not going to keep it as a favorite. And then you can hit play or back, right? And you can also adjust the settings for that game here. Being able to go into your favorite tab is really easy. Just highlight over the star, and then you can launch the favorite tab. One of the cool things that I like to set up with my Super Nintendo is a couple of fan translations or fan hacks. So Gundam Wing Endless Duel is a really cool game. People like it. It's a fight. It's like a 2D fighter, but it was only released on the Super Famicom. But when I have this set up at a convention, there's a bunch of Gundam fans out there, and people who may not have been able to play this game before, and so it's kind of just like a really highlighted, cool experience. It's a colorful game, lots of blue and green. I like it. So you get to enjoy the game, etc. Boom. Now there are hotkeys and binds to. I just power cycle when I want to reload. Luckily, the WeFlow menu doesn't take very long to boot. One of the nice things about this, especially if you've used that preloader option, is you're not having to wait through that boot menu screen. Oh, screen capture card messed up a little bit here. Let's just fix that. Sorry about that. Yeah, one of the nice things about using preloader to remove those boot things is like when you need to, switch between games. Now there are like hot key commands and you can look them up, but they're different for each emulator. There's no like one key combination that you can set just to be able to exit the emulator back into the menu. And then with a lot of emulators, like for example, let me show you an example of a 64 game. Like even if you were to exit the emulator, you would see. That's a good game to boot real quick. Even if you're to exit the emulator, it still relaunches WeFlow. So when you launch a 64 game from within WeFlow, you can exit it with a usually, yeah. So I just mash the buttons and I can get to the menu. You can come to quit, exit to loader. It's still gonna reboot WeFlow. So it really doesn't matter if you manually hit the keybinds or don't. And it's a little different per system, etc. But it's just super easy to hit the power cycle button on it. Um, One of the things I've set up here for my 64 emulation is a it's a I wouldn't it's a fan translation, but it's seeing a lot of tournament play in the Project 64 circle or in the Smash 64 circle. So like the original Smash um, playing the original Smash Brothers community. One of their members has made, and I'll leave a link to his GitHub with the instructions on how to create a Smash remix ROM. Usually in tournament play, it's played on like an EverDrive or I mean, usually they're just using an EverDrive, but you can load this on like a RetroPie. You can load it with a Wii 64 emulator on a Wii, and it's a fun game. It's actually had extra characters added to it, so you can see here we have Dark Samus is an extra one, Young Link, Gandorf, Doctor Mario. I think Doctor Mario is a new character. I think there's one other one I'm forgetting, but exactly. So you can use, it's got a couple of fresh characters, a little bit of game balancing. It's got, so and I think there's a certain, tournament at like Project 64 event, at Smash 64 events. They have side tournaments for this specific game, and it's pretty fun. Plays well. I am terrible at Smash, but I like to have it set up for people who are going to use. Got Ganondorf, the character, which I don't know how to play. Yep, there we go. So just going to reboot here. Keep showing off a few other features of this. Now currently I have the output to 720p. Yeah, so the Wii's are configured in its primary menu to display 720p, and I'll show you what that looks like with progressive scan on like a GameCube. So you can launch a GameCube and Nintendo will actually force progressive. It should give you the option to. It'll be a little weird for a moment, and then you should get a little pop-up screen that says, "Would you like to enable progressive scan?" So there it is. Would you like to display in progressive scan mode? So now both the display source and the emulator and the capture card may be struggling with this. Let me see if I can just. There we go. So now both the source system and the native GameCube are in 720p, and it looks really good. Just give me a second. Looks even better on a CRT. So, as I said, you can get component cables for a Wii real easy, and then plug those into a CRT. I'm lucky enough to have an Ikegami that supports 480p, So it looks really good on that. Oof, whiffed that. And with GameCube, you have to hard restart because it's obviously it's not an emulator, so you just can't back out of it into the front end. It is running native. I'll go back to the Super Nintendo wheel, kind of on that same Japanese translations that we were talking about earlier. What do I have in here that's actually really interesting? I have Sailor Moon S. Is a game that I like to keep on here because it's like it's a Sailor Moon fighter. Oh, not another story. Another story is an RPG. Sailor Moon S is a Sailor Moon fighter, and this is real popular with like at conventions. People just really like this game because it was not available, on like your original. It was not available on your original like Super Nintendo. You weren't able to play it, and then so people love playing this at cons. I think it's like a. I think they used to have like at some of the bigger fighting game tournaments. This would be like a cool down game or like like a side game. Oof, bodied. Is that a taunt? This character has no projectile, or at least that I can find. Bodied again. All right, just power cycling that the Wii one more time. Yeah, what else do I have on here? I have like I think one of the cool things that I set up was Star Fox 2, but if you Google around, a there was so the Star Fox 2 was released on the Super Nintendo Classic. So if you bought the Classic, you can rip the Star Fox 2 ROM off there. If you Google around a bit, there's also some people that have already done that on the internet. So this version of Star Fox 2 is the version take. So there's been a ROM for Star Fox 2 on on the nets for a while that was ripped from the prototype cart, and this is the one that was ripped from the Super Nintendo Classic, which had fixes done on it. So it's probably your best playable experience for Star Fox 2, which is pretty cool. So that's one of the ones that I keep on here, as well as like Secret of Mana. This one's Secret of Mana 2. I've got a really terrible box art. Like I try to format one I found on the net. It doesn't look really good. I got to fix that. This is like a fan translation of Secret of Mana 2. So this is like a couple of cool games that I try to keep on the Wii so that people can try out stuff maybe they haven't been able to try before. We showed the systems. I mean, that's really all there is to it. It's a very simple system. It emulates 64 well. It emulates GameCube, perfectly, and it's very simple to get your controllers working. So take a look at it, and if there's a lot of interest in how this system's up, and you guys are having trouble with like the WeFlow artwork, or preloader, let me know, and I'll see if I can take the time to make a like an instructional how-to guide. Thanks, guys.